All right, everyone. Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Kirk from St. John's PD in Michigan, 36th year in law enforcement. He's had a variety of different roles, including defensive tactics instructor, canine handler, detective sergeant. He is now the chief of police and a chairperson for Michigan Association of Chief of Police Legislative Committee. Welcome to the show, Chief Kirk. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Paige. I appreciate it.
Of course. I always get tongue-tied and twisted when I say these things. And so I know now why you guys have so many acronyms just to make it easier.
You're
But
talking code.
yep. Well, I appreciate you coming on here today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. One of the things that you said to me when we first connected that I thought was really interesting, and I wanted to kind of dive a little bit deeper into this, is you said that wellness is one of the biggest things that's not being prioritized right now. What are you seeing? I know that you've been in this career a really long time, and obviously back when you started, wellness was not a part of the conversation at all, and it is now today. But what are you still seeing today as far as wellness maybe not being at the top of the priority list?
I think we've had struggles recruiting and retaining police officers is kind of a new trend.
Mhm.
So it has always been kind of something that you try to find time for, right? Everybody knows that fitness should be part of this program. You think to people in the police academy and how much fitness is stressed there. So you come out probably the best shape physically of your life, the sharpest mentally, and the most refreshed on legal things. But then how quickly that changes when you start talking about investigative loads that end up having to go to court. So you have night police officers having to, schedule sleep around making court appointments. Then that workout time and other wellness time ends up not being prioritized where it should be to have that sufficient time. So you get up, you eat fast food, you go to court, you're not getting good sleep. So then when it comes, hey, I should be really jumping in the gym for a run or doing some strength conditioning or something, the nap takes prevalence, right? So then you're kind of fall into that cycle because of the work patterns. It's no less important to have that fitness element in place for the officers, particularly if when it becomes a dynamic situation on a call. But generally, too, just you don't want your life expectancy to be low because of the way you maintain your health. So, and it's just that prioritization and those things that need to be done on the business side of things that steals opportunities from the wellness and health side, I think.
Yeah, I think it's such a deeper conversation, and I really appreciate that you brought in the realities of the career and how they can get in the way, because it's real. Like I've had a lot of conversations. You talked about sleep just now. And that's real life for you guys. And there's also life that happens outside of the job. And there's people with kids. Maybe you just came off a really long shift and now you got soccer practice, now you got other things that you need to do. And so I appreciate you bringing that up because I know a lot of people who are listening are shaking their head and they're like, yeah, like it's really difficult to manage everything. I also am noticing that a couple things. Well, actually, maybe I'll phrase this as a question. Do you think that because there aren't any continued standards from the academy entering into their agency, that maybe that is also a reason why some of those things start to fall? Do you think that if there were more standards in the context of maybe a physical fitness standard, that maybe those things would be kept up over time? Or what is your thought on that?
Yeah, I definitely do. And you can, when you start thinking about what's the solution, that mandate is going to have to come because then that forces the time element on the administrative side of things. So I know some departments, our department currently doesn't have I would say it's more rare to have departments, larger departments, metropolitan departments, I think have a little bit more of a tendency to put those things in place, even though they're not mandated. So in Michigan, like a lot of other states, we have a commission that sets law enforcement standards.
Yep.
They're really starting to get some momentum on continuing professional education among those things. So defensive tactics are among them. But right now, there's not a carve out where you have to do a part of every duty day for you is going to involve some kind of physical fitness like it does in the police academy. And making those mandates not only locally or locally controlled by each department, but some kind of a licensing oversight that in order to be a police officer for your own good is the other portion of that. You're going to have to participate and maintain these physical fitness standards as you're moving through your career to keep that license in place.
Yeah. Well, and you brought up something earlier that I think is the conversation where a lot of leaders are kind of afraid, I think, of having these standards set after the fact, because you said retention, hiring is really hard. And so the conversation then comes, well, are we going to lose people because they can't meet whatever standard is now put in place? And I've actually had some conversations with other leaders who are trying to do some sort of standardization, and they're starting with like baby steps. Like, okay, we're just gonna like have you guys do this, and then we're gonna work your way up to this, and then this, and then eventually this is gonna be like that standard that we're trying to maintain over time. But it's not like 0 to 1,000, and if you can't meet it, you're out of there. They're trying to figure out ways to develop their people, who maybe don't meet that standard right now, and maybe have kind of let life and work life get the better of them. I'll put in quotes in the terms of their physical wellness. And so I agree with you. I think that there is going to be a day where there is a standard that is across the board. I don't think we're there yet. I think that there still is a lot of fear and question of, okay, are we going to lose people, and we can't afford to do that.
I agree with you. Yes. You try to bait them in. So the reason why you want to have those standards in place is because you care about your police officers. So you do the, hey, we love you and we love you so much. I want you to go run or I want you to go do push-ups. So it's, kind of getting back into that high school or before mentality where the coaches make you do this physical exercise stuff, but you're doing it for a reason because you're trying to wrap around and protect them and make them as effective as they can be so they're safe. But
Mm.
sometimes getting to the end of that, we kind of joked around about putting it in. And you're right, you have to at some point. The departments will, as your age goes up, it kind of changes the curve a little bit for you. But then you set that, hey, here's the academy standard. If you were able to get this academy standard, maybe we'll give you, 4 hours of personal time because you made that standard, right? Or 4 hours if you come and did it. But as we were having this conversation, one of the people in the conversation said, like, yeah, we'll have them do the physical fitness thing. If they show up, even if they don't complete it, we'll give them a pizza. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure giving them a pizza is going to take care of the physical fitness side. So maybe, give them a little time as opposed to carbohydrates that we're trying to get them back into that lean and mean stage. So
That's so funny. It actually cracks me up whenever I am, like attending a wellness conference or something. You always look at all the vendors are, handing out candy, like all the lunch or all the whatever. It's always, and I'm like, wait, this is a wellness specific presentation. Like maybe we should, think about the snacks and the food that we're providing. I think that's funny. We'll give them a pizza. I like that you said the why. I think it's incredibly important to explain why these things are important or why you're looking at maybe changing policies or standards. And I think a lot of people can get on board with things if they understand the why, especially if it's what you just said. You're like, we're trying to protect you. This is for your performance, your safety, your longevity. Like we want to make sure that you live the longest, healthiest life that you possibly can. And there are things that are likely to happen. We can see these. What is the saying? If it's predictable, it's preventable.
one of my favorite sayings is,
Yeah. And so we look at this in wellness too. Like you guys prepare so much for things that are likely to happen on the job, right? That, if you go to a DV call, here's some things that could happen and you're trained and you're prepared for that. right? And so wellness is the same thing. It's like, okay, like we know that cumulative stress, trauma, sedentary lifestyle, like sitting for long periods of time, we know that carrying heavy equipment for years and years and years, we know that there are things, you just explained some of the things too, like sleep deprivation, not getting enough sleep impacts everything. And so if we know that these things are predictable, these things are likely to happen or can happen, then they are preventable. So we can get in front of it. It's just more about proactive, preventative, and it's so much easier to I always say it's easier to get fit than, or excuse me, it's easier to stay fit than to get fit. So
Mhm.
it's easier if we create these habits and these resources early. I think where we are right now is because those things weren't there. Now it's kind of the uphill battle of trying to get back to that place. So I love that you also talked a little bit about like coaching and mentorship a little bit, because I was just doing a presentation today and I was kind of relating law enforcement to professional athleticism. And for sports teams, like their number one priority is to protect the assets. Like they invest millions of dollars into these players, right? As an organization, it's very similar. Like you guys invest a lot of money and resources into your people and your team, and they are your most valuable asset. And so every goal and every initiative should be to protect the asset, right? We want to make sure that they're safe, they're, as happy as they can be, as healthy as they can be. And so what are the conversations and the resources that have to be put in place in order to achieve that and to move everyone forward?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great that relating that to professional sports is incredibly accurate too. Having that be the other portion of that too is so as time changed, you get in and you kind of try to be you come out of the police academy and then you are looking for mentors and seeing how they would appear to be the successful officers are functioning and how they function. And if that isn't on that wellness path, then you start following the path thinking that's the path to success. It's that whole change of like, hey, we got to take care of each other, and by taking care of each other we take care of ourselves. Because if you need me at some kind of a physical altercation and I can't get to you, or if when I do get to you, I got to stop and catch my breath before I jump in and help the situation. It all becomes, helping each other and taking care of each other at a fairly deep level too. So
Yeah. To that point, because I always tell people, I'm like, if we're relating it to sports, like, okay, you guys are running down the field, right? You're tackling the bad guys. Um, your career requires that you operate at a really high and effective physical and mental level. You have to perform under pressure. But for you, the stakes are a lot higher. It's not about winning a football game. It could be life or death, and so there is an importance of being able to effectively, perform the functions of your career. Do you think that wellness equals safety?
I do, unquestionably so. So you start thinking about that adrenaline dump that you get, and they talk about, sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system, all of those biological things that start happening, right? So when I would try to do in conjunction with some of my defensive tactics training, I would do assault prevention stuff as well. The fear that comes along with a confrontation. So, we're not talking about a sporting event. You're about to get into a confrontation that could be a life and death confrontation. So you immediately get that adrenaline dump, all of those biological things that are happening. And if you don't condition your body to it, then you kind of equate it to, so in Michigan, we have heart attack snow season. So you haven't done anything for a long time. And then somebody goes out and shovels snow, and that physical activity, the exertion they're not used to, here comes the heart attack. When
Mm,
you have that big dump of adrenaline right before you get into some kind of a confrontation, that is going to do that same thing to you biologically, right? So if you're not fit and ready for that, that's where those stress induced problems start happening. And whether or not you can imagine too, and it's happened before, sadly enough, where you go to try to be in an event as an assisting person, and either because of what happens to you or you're not successful, now we have two officers in trouble as opposed to one. And
yep.
we had that maintenance of standards, right? And you hate that. hate trying to make it a critical assessment of somebody, but it's back to that. If you're not ready for this, sooner or later, in some form or fashion, it's going to get to you, whether it causes a medical event for yourself or you're not able to effectively defend yourself or help another officer. That's where that starts being the mandate for that. If we don't have that fitness level in place, it goes, pebble in the pond and touches so many other things if you don't have that element there.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually really interested to kind of go down this path with you. I know you are a defensive tactics instructor, and so yes, you focus on the physical side of things, but you are actually also focusing on nervous system regulation through this. What were some of the things that maybe you trained? And for anyone who's listening, who I understood what you were saying when you said, your sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. And so, anyone who doesn't know what that is, like parasympathetic nervous system is what we want. We want like it's rest and digest. So you think like fight or flight or freeze. We know there's three responses. And freeze was always something that wasn't really talked about a lot, but a lot of people are starting to come out and talk about how that is kind of the third reaction to something really stressful. And we're trying to regulate the nervous system and come back to more of like a baseline or like I always call it like, you're trying to come back down to like level, and so I wanted to explain that because if someone was like, what, and I've had to learn to try to teach things like third grade level, because I think sometimes when I say stuff too, people look at me like really funny. But what were some of the things that you taught for like nervous system regulation as it pertains to the job? I think this is a really interesting topic.
Yep. So on the law enforcement side and the police officer side, it used to be everybody at some point as they were growing up would get into those physical confrontations. So at the academy setting, it's getting more and more common to have recruits in the academy that have never been in a fight growing up. They're behaving there, that isn't their element that they've been in. So they haven't experienced all of those things that you're talking about, the adrenaline dump and those sorts of things. So the first thing is preparing them, getting that readiness. So we've kind of moved away from that training where all you ever have contact with is like a strike shield or a dummy. You try to do dynamic training and put the red man gear that's like pads all the way up. So it's actually more like a physical confrontation. Maybe sometimes you have multiple assailants or multiple offenders to try and recreate that stress reaction. But what I stress to them, so you can imagine without putting the stress reaction is very similar to an anger reaction, right? So if you haven't had the opportunity to experience a stress reaction getting into a fight, everybody has had that moment where somebody does something or says something that it just triggers you, all of the excitement that comes along with it. So you anticipate that your heart rate is going to get faster. Anticipate that you're going to start breathing fast for no reason. So it's not like you're in the middle of a fight, it's before a fight. So when you get that adrenaline officer calling for help on the radio, you can hear sometimes even more seasoned officers. They get on the radio, they're huffing and puffing, and their voice is strained. And all we're doing is talking on the radio because we're not controlling that. So the biggest portion of that is recognize what's happening to you. You are Superman, Batman, or Aquaman, whichever your favorite superhero is, you've got 90 seconds of that super adrenalized strength and all of those things that come with it. Recognize it, management, and a lot of that tactical breathing and calming yourself down and knowing, breathing in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Don't necessarily have to talk, but just get yourself composed and understand what is happening to you. One of the big things too is when that happens, people identify it and define it as being fear, right? Oh, my heart's pounding, I'm afraid. Oh, I'm breathing heavy, I'm afraid. Well, on the other side of that, you're not afraid, you're getting that adrenaline. You're superhuman now. So change your own definition to I've got 90 seconds of really good stuff that I'm going to be able to jump in and help with, as opposed to that, oh, I can't do anything because I'm petrified. Listen to my voice, listen to my breathing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you brought up breathing. This is, I think, one of the easiest ways to create emotional regulation and to create more of that mental training. And it's funny because you said tactical breathing. And I had someone tell me one time, they're like, just put tactical in front of anything and then it makes it cool. And then everyone like gets on board with this. So instead of being like breathing techniques, we're like, we're doing tactical breathing and then it's cool, and everyone's into it. But I teach something, and I think it's really in line with what you just said. And again, it's like kind of my way of like trying to create maybe like memorable sayings, so that people remember it, and can, actually implement it. But I say, control the breath. That's step one. Control the breath, control the mind. So when you control your breathing, you're going to reduce your stress. You're going to have more clarity in your mind, and then control your actions and reactions. So when you have more of that clear mind, you can make more effective decisions, right? And so control the breath, control the mind, control actions, reactions. And so it almost becomes kind of like, I'll put tactical in front of it, like a tactical mantra, where you can like have three really clear steps of, okay, breath first. That's going to help with my mind. And then that's going to help me in the way I respond to something and the decisions that I make. And I think that everything that we've been talking about so far has been like a really strong conversation, and how this applies to the career, like how this helps with safety. You've really tied it into performance on the job. And yet, wellness still has a stigma attached to it. And people still think that wellness is weak. I'm going to put that in like quotes. And I feel like everything that we've talked about so far is so strong, and it's mental training, it's physical training, it's safety training. Why is there still a stigma?
I think when you talk about tactical, making everything cool, even though wellness is a good thing. There, I don't know if that is the buzzword, but in the Iron Horse days of police work, anything that was feeling like, well, hey, let's sit in a circle or possibly hug and sing, those kind of things. It's like if you're the real police, the hardcore heavy metal police, you don't need these things. You just go out and do it. You barehand it, right? So as opposed to jumping into something that you know is better, and again, maybe changing it to tactical wellness so that those police will jump into it, right?
Yeah.
The stigma comes from, I think it is, if it doesn't feel like an operational or a kind of a, I don't know, militaristic is the right word or not, but it's that it's okay, police officers, you can be a paying attention to wellness and still be, you pick the term that you want. Sometimes they call them pipe hitters in the service, those hardcore, hard charging people that, hey, as a young police officer, I want to emulate that police officer. Well, then if embrace that wellness, however you want to define it, I think that's the bridge that we have to still get over a little bit.
Yeah. And I do, I had someone explain this. I was doing a peer support like meeting, and I was asking this question. I'm like, has it been an uphill battle? Is there a stigma? Like, what's going on? And they asked if I had seen this movie before. Um, it was like Ridgecrest or something, a movie I've never seen. But he was explaining it, and he was like, okay, there's like this like plateau, and it's like a wall, and there's like this rope or, like netting that they're like climbing. And he's like, it's not even an uphill battle. He's like, it's a wall. And we're trying to, climb this wall. And it was a really good, I'm actually a visual person. So I like appreciated him kind of like explaining like what they were feeling. And I think the conversation is, one, there's always going to be fear of the unknown. There's always going to be fear of change. I think that that's human nature. I do think that it takes time to have these conversations, to build trust, but to make those changes within an organization that historically didn't have it. I think that there's always going to be people who are kind of like, I don't know, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for the organization? And so I always say it's a slow moving ship. It's like the Titanic. It's not going to turn really fast. It's not a jet ski that we can just like whip 180. But I do think that and I'll predict maybe in the next 5, 10 years, I do think that it will become something that's super normal because everyone who is like of maybe like the older generation will start to retire. All the new people who are coming in, where it is a part of the conversation, it is a part of defensive tactics. They walk into agencies that do have resources. It's not going to be so scary or foreign. It's going to be like, oh, like, yeah, we've always had that, but I do think it's going to take time. But one of the things you said to me, or that you and I talked about offline that I thought was really interesting was kind of this perspective of like, because I think people are afraid of being viewed as weak. And, so there's this question of like, would you rather be viewed as weak or would you rather fail on the job? And I think like I even, my brain goes like, or just like fail in your life, like in order for you to be successful in your career, in order for you to be successful in your home life, you have to be good. You have to be good physically and mentally. There's no way that you can give everybody else the time, the attention, the performance that they deserve if you're not good. And so I really liked that question of like, well, which would you prefer? Like at this point in my life, and I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older, like I kind of don't care if people think that I'm weak. Like, am I going out there being like, look at me, I'm weak, I want you to think I'm weak? No, but like if I go out there and I'm like, hey, like I need something because I'm struggling right now, I would much rather the judgment of someone just thinking I'm weak than for me to fail at my career or my personal life.
Yeah. Couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, that it's 100% on target. And it's unfortunate too. And I actually think it's getting to be a little bit more cognitive profession. So the people are starting to think and see. So you see those people that function and at one point, and you talk about as you get older, so as that evolution happens and you start watching successful people, it's not always the ones that profess how hard of a charger they are, right? Other officers witness somebody being successful and watch how they model themselves, where
Hmm.
they place wellness as a priority, how they interact with people because of that. All of a sudden, it's like you're having successes and following a different trail, right? That trail's now departing and being smarter about it, having to be whole so you are effective at home, right? Taking on all the troubles and problems that come along with it. If you don't figure out a way to manage that, that includes those wellness elements, you're not only going to fail on your job, you could fail, your health could fail, or you could fail your family. And nobody wants that either, because again, then it just snowballs and makes everything worse.
Yeah. To your point, do you think that it's almost everyone's responsibility to share the things that have helped them and the things that they're doing to kind of make it okay so that the people who are trying to emulate you hear that from you?
100%. And with some of those things you don't realize. So as you start into your profession, you come in, you function appropriately, you do well in your field training, you come out. It's not long after that, people are starting to watch you. Do you have the potential to be a field training officer? So one of the most probably unsung but vital roles is who do we want teaching our younger cops how to be the police, right? So the people you select for FTO positions, then if they emulate that, let them know how important they are. Hey, even though you're a field training officer and maybe you don't assess yourself as the value that you actually give to the agency, this is where these young police officers are going to set their patterns, right? So you start having to make that push. They're already looking at you as a mentor, as an FTO. You let them know, hey, you know what? You have to pay attention to your health. You need to make sure you're getting your rest. And let's not go to, I'm not going to slam any particular fast food restaurant, but let's go get some sushi maybe, and that's not something terrible for you. All of those things, and start kind of redirecting that whole training sequence to make that. But yeah, if you don't start doing that, the officers that are influential don't start sending that message. That's the only way I think it's going to take full hold and kind of pull that next generation in the right direction with us.
Yeah. I also think that, and I was actually just thinking about this today. I think it's also just so important that there's authenticity behind what you're teaching or what you're saying, because everyone knows, like, if you're like, yeah, it's important to do this and you should do that, but if behind closed doors, you're doing the opposite of that, you can lose your credibility so fast. And I just heard the story that I thought was just so interesting. There, I won't say who it is or what the book is, but there's this really famous book, famous, super famous, like in the wellness space. And apparently the author was just listed in like the Epstein files. And there was this story about the guy, like in the book, he was talking about how he had his like kid had some medical issues or whatever. Well, turns out he had told his wife he couldn't come back to like be there with the kid because he was working. But really he was going to like the Epstein Island the next day. So when, like, we have to be so intentional when we're trying to set the example for other people and be leaders within the space. It takes so much time to build up that trust and that credibility, and in a flash it could be completely gone. And so, are you leading with authenticity? Are you practicing the things that you're teaching? And I had to, when I saw that, I was like, wow, it really just takes everything that this person said, even though they probably said a lot of good things and real things. And it kind of, I talked to other people. I actually heard this from another chief. So like a lot of people know this, they're tossing it out the window. So I think it's an important reminder to everyone, whether you are a wellness provider or in leadership or a peer, and you're trying to set an example, there has to be authenticity behind what you're doing.
And the authenticity, and then the kind of the show and tell too, so they see that
Mhm.
it's this is what I'm telling you. You lead by demonstration, right? They watch you. He says this. What's he doing? So it's just kind of funny too. So as we talk about evolutions and things that are sometimes counter to the program, I still wear the like traditional police uniform our guys have gotten, and they make them a lot more comfortable, so they're, I mean, duty ready. But we joke around about the comfort waistband. So you have your patrol pants when you put them on, and they're supposed to be a 36, but you can stretch them 6 inches to a 42. So I've told recently, one of our guys that just came out of the field training program, everybody gets Class A uniform. I said, you want to do your favor, wear your Class A uniform when you have to go to court. Okay. So we're talking about why that matters. Well, you come out of the police academy in your first dress uniform and you don't put it on for a couple months, and then you go to button the pants that aren't the comfort waist, and you do the uh-oh. So if you do that, break that stuff out. So it's like, hey, these pants don't lie. That those are 36 and they're going to be 36. So bust them out every so often and try them on. But yeah, setting those examples and making sure you walk the walk and just don't talk the talk is incredibly important for the young guys and ladies that are in the profession.
I agree. That's so funny. I'm gonna have to do that. I'm gonna have to find like a pair of pants that are like my own version of like the court pants. Just make sure I'm on track here. Um, I know we're button up on time here, but for that younger generation, what words of wisdom would you share with them? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier, or something that has helped you that you want to pass on to them.
Yep. Like we talked about before, I've reviewed stuff, and what you do is wonderful. So trying to get that best wisdom that you can get out there, and you see those retain your why messages. I guess two things that I would like to pass on if I could have is always try to bloom where you're planted. So when you have those young police officers start into their career, type A personalities, and they set that objective time frame, in 3 years I want to be doing this, or 5 years I want to be doing that. Being effective in the role of a public safety person, police officer, is so impactful. It could be, even though runs get to be routine for you, that might be the only time someone ever calls in their life for a police officer, and you have that engagement with them. So don't forget the role that you hold in any of those roles is incredibly important and impactful. And then the other that I always try to say, and I don't know if hug back is the right word, but what I worry about for our young people, and you see it happening, you get into that law enforcement silo. So everything you do is law enforcement. It's law enforcement friends. Then you start having those conversations, but you forget about the people that support you in those different roles, particularly at home. The conversations where you have, a bad day, you go home and they get the you wouldn't understand. Well, the wives and husbands, boyfriends, girlfriends, moms and dads hear sirens. There's all kinds of apps on phones that let them know if something bad is happening. That impacts them hard too. So don't ever give up that opportunity to have people care about you and keep that open. So when they might not, and hopefully they don't have to understand all the ins and outs and pain and suffering that goes on with that, but let them be a resource and allow them to be there for you to support you and keep those people close because providing that to public safety people is an incredibly important resource for you as you move on through your career.
Thank you. I really appreciate your words of wisdom and you coming here on the show with me today. And I couldn't agree more with that last sentiment of, trying to stay open. And it's hard. I think that a lot of times, and I've done this in my life too, where you build up these impenetrable walls because you think that it's just going to block out all the bad stuff and it's going to keep you safe. But when you block out the bad stuff, you can block out the good stuff too. And you can kind of wall the people who mean something to you out. And so I really appreciate those words of wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you.